Hi everyone, I'm Nicolas Peltier. I'm a developer for Adobe.com websites. I'm also a Sling committer. I'm mostly known here for presenting Sling pipes. I will talk about Sling pipes, but not in that talk, in the lightning talk later. I'm here to talk to you about a non-technical subject, which is open development. I'm starting this with mind-blowing truths. First one is that managers are not architects. And why am I stressing this? It's because they are in charge of the most important architecture of a company, which is the human organization. And not to put the blame on them, humans are quite complicated to organize because human interaction is a complicated thing. You can find funny drawings on organizations, well-known organizations here. The cool thing is we here are developers, so we can narrow down the problem to IT people interactions. And we might as well make it even simpler because we are all developers working on applications on top of a Sling framework, which makes basically the communication even simpler. Yet, we've all been shown in our developer life complicated stuff, explaining us how we should work, right? You see here a snapshot from a really nice and interesting Spotify video explaining their development culture. And so it's really interesting it's always interesting to learn how people are working together. But taking a step back, it's full of words we already know, like in this one, tribe, chapter, guild, that are bound to concepts we already know, which is working in teams, sharing knowledge across teams. And in the end, we have words we already know, we have concepts we already know, and the creation starts to only be the relationship between words and concepts. And at some point, I know a lot of people are making a lot of money doing books and talks, bounding words with concepts. But at some point, we might lose time. And again, I should have the disclaimer here. Some of it has been efficient. There are words you all know that were not meant for computing before, which is print or velocity, or being stand up. And all of that now means something else to you because it's bound to concepts we all know. And those concepts have been really helpful in the end to help us achieve a new way of building software. And I wouldn't give up the fact that if a user asks me for a new thing, I have the possibility to tell him, well, I will work on something that looks like what you're asking for, and we will see in a short while what I've done, and we'll see from here if we iterate over it. And I think it's a great way to build things that converge to something satisfactory. So it's really cool, right? However, I think we are now at the nice point where we know how to build things. I wouldn't change much about it. I wouldn't add new words to describe it. But there are still things that fail, basically. And to me, it's at the communication level between teams, or even within the team if it's big enough. Good news, again, is that there are things that exist from experienced people, and one methodology that exists is the open development principle that came from Apache Foundation, and that is really close to citizenship. And citizenship basically is mostly two things. It's defined against a community, the one we know, with the community is a nation defined by its border, and citizens of that nation are access to some rights and have some duties. Now, if I bring that analogy to the Sling community world, you have some rights, which is you have the access to the source code, to the Apache Sling framework. You can run it, you can modify it, you can have access to the history, you can ask for a change. So many rights and great rights to develop your applications, and that's really cool. What I want to put the focus on right now is the duties you have against that community. And ideally, I would like that we get to the conclusion that those duties in the end bring you good. When I'm talking about duties, it's mostly one duty. I've grouped that in one thing, which is you must contribute back to the community. And I was able to put that in one thing because it's a large term of contribution. You can see the contribution cup from GitHub there that is made of the metrics used by GitHub for contribution. And if you know, a contribution from GitHub is either a commit, but it can be a comment in a pull request, or a pull request, or an issue. And it's a bit the same kind of grouping I did. So obviously there is code. You don't like something, or you would like something else, you do a PR. But obviously as well, announcing or proposing something, sending a mail to the community, this is something that sounds obvious. Which sounds a bit less obvious would be a Jira you create saying, there is a null pointer exception here, please fix that. But this is still kind of, because you are giving the information, there is that problem here. And then the question, which is maybe the less obvious here, is to me also a contribution to a community, because you have two kinds of people that will read your question. The one who know, who think they know the answer to your question, and this is a valid information for them because they know that they see that there might be some lack of documentation on the topic we are talking about. They can also see that there might be too much complexity around the topic we are talking about. And then there are people who don't know. And they might learn, reading at your question, that they don't know something. They may not have realized their ignorance. And this is a really nice thing to learn, right? That you don't know something. And another thing is, even if they knew they were not knowing the thing you were asking something about, they are seeing someone rephrasing their ignorance. And this is a nice way to think about it. And this is a rich experience. And then there are people answering. And this is also a very rich moment because first, as the one who asked, you get an answer and you know that everybody reads at the answer. And it gives the answer some weight, right? And then if somebody disagrees, you might have two answers. And those answers might be not compatible, might be not agreeing, but how great it is to have, for one question, two different answers, and knowing that they are both valid and different. I think it's a richness you wouldn't have with a smaller community. Maybe we should talk a bit about what communities we are talking about. So obviously there is the Apache Sling community, but the first community you are working with will be the project. It's a community that happens. You're working with 5 developers, 10, 80, and you are all contributing to the same code base. You are all talking with each other, Slack or whatever, and this is the first step. At that step level, you can already hide information from the others. And all I'm saying in that talk already applies to that community. It's important to consider the whole community of your project at that point, not just to talk to your neighbor at your desk, but to share information with everyone. Then it's all about the specificity of the contribution you're thinking of to do to the community. Maybe the things you're working on are worth sharing with the whole company for another project, and then if your company has that, you can share with a wider community and even go back to the whole Apache Sling community if you can. This contribution happen when to contribute is a question you have to ask yourself, and what I've just described is the first step of this is to generalize your thought. So you're thinking of a question, of an answer, of some code that could be helpful to somebody else. It's really that way of thinking. And basically, you have to remove all the layers of specificity that are not the core of what you're thinking about. And why you do that, you eat more and more people that this contribution could be helpful for. Once you've done that and you have something pretty pure, you can start researching, right, in the archives of each community, in the code source of each community, if it's code we are talking about. And you can then see that maybe it already exists, and then, well, you've learned that it already exists. Or maybe there are gaps, right? Maybe it's a bit different from what you were thinking of, either information, again, or code. And then you can start talking, or it doesn't exist at all, and then you must contribute back and reach that last part, which might be the most difficult one, which is to dare, right? And the wider, the better the work you did at the first step, which is to generalize, the wider the community you would contribute to is, and you have then many eyeballs looking at you, right, about to contribute. And I understand there is a mental barrier here, because yes, they might laugh at you or whatever, but I think what is important at that step to consider is, because you did those 2 first steps, there is no stupid contribution at that point, right? Even if it's a pure ignorance you want to contribute to the community, you did some research, you did spend a lot of time on that ignorance, and this will bring something for sure to the community, and you should really not be scared about that. So yeah, I will go really quickly on how to contribute, because I think you really know the different tools for this. Important bit in this slide is stable URLs. There is a link about a nice blog post from Bertrand on that. Stable URLs, so that everything links together and you have a living documentation and history around the codes for the community. And now comes the question that criticizers of open development will tell you. You're really nice, you hippie with your open development principle, but I have deadlines I must work against, and I need to be efficient. And My point is that you are more efficient doing open development principles. And I can give it some things around that at 3 levels. First, for your project, if the team is geo-distributed, information will be widespread and everybody will be aware of what you're doing about maybe, again, lack of documentations and things like that. Failures and mistakes will be found faster. Other people can solve your problem, which is really great, right? You spend less time coding yourself and reinventing the wheel. You can't be as clever as more than your brain thinking about one question, so you take wiser decisions, right? A subset of others solve your problem, other might maintain your code, not your code, or already existing code outside of your project. So in the end, the maintenance costs are getting down. And yes, you have better documentation ever, because again, you need to know something about a decision on some code. You have archives, you have Jira, you have everything linked together with stable URLs. For your career, it's an important bit that it's often not talked about because of humility and things like that. But you are recognized by the community as an individual. Often, when you hear and you tell your name, people just realize who you are because they know your name. It's already that, right? To be known like that. And then, yeah, it's better to be known by the community for your career. You learn others' coding skills and communication skills as well, trying to generalize, trying to tell what you wanted to other people, and a lot of people with different culture is really great to learn to communicate, right? And yes, then you also shift your mind to another place where other people think different, and you end up enriched with all those changes. And finally, for your community, right? Apache Sling, you can define Apache Sling like it's a framework, it's a web framework, but I think of Apache Sling foremost as a community, right? As people working together. And you can make that at several levels, like in your project. If you manage to have several people working together in that open way, discussing with each other, taking the habit to communicate well, then you end up as a team working better and doing more projects and being happier in the end, which is what we are all aiming for, I hope. I think I have some time for questions now, but I'm not sure I will have any. Or you can ask questions on the mailing list, of course.
Any questions? Oh, there's one.
Oh,
over the front.
okay.
Hello. You mentioned the Apache Jira board as a point where one can contribute. Are there other hubs or points where a willing contributor or community member could head to learn about the community?
To learn about the community?
And to contribute.
Right. So Robert mentioned that Sling has just shifted to GitHub. I guess it's a bit fresh, but there are already people doing PR, and because GitHub is well done on this, people talking there. I guess this will converge to something. I don't know what. It doesn't belong to anyone, the decision on how. But it's another place where you can do that. I think we don't prevent anything. I would recommend the mail. I know that sending Sending a mail is something difficult because you have to choose the object, you have to think about the wording and so on. But really, people are really friendly and will welcome your mail without any issue. And I would think about this first, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Nicolas.
You're welcome.